Hello, namaste. Welcome back to Bhagavatam for Rationalists. My name is Kamalakar Gulukota, and in this web series, we are talking about Bhagavatam. Um, in this episode, we are going to talk about Lord Vishnu. So, we talked about a number of different avatars, and we're going to talk about many more in the future. But before delving into those details, let's talk about God Himself. Who is taking all these avatars? And that is Vishnu, and Vishnu is part of the so called Trinity. There is Brahma, who is supposed to be the creator, Vishnu, who maintains the universe, and Shiva destroys the universe because you need to have constant destruction in order to have creation also. So the Trinity has three separate roles: creation, maintenance, destruction. Vishnu, being the maintainer, has taken many avatars because maintenance requires constant work, right? So that's why Vishnu has all these avatars to maintain the universe and dharma. Now, in describing Vishnu, there are two different aspects to it, and I'd like to illustrate it to you in this slide. On the left, what you see is an anthropomorphic or a human like version of Vishnu. It's like a modern painting. And what you see is this man, a handsome looking, dark skinned man. He has four arms. One of those arms contains a mace, and in another arm, he has a chakram or a wheel as a weapon. In the third arm, he has a conch shell. It is something that he blows on in order to, whenever there is going to be a war or when he wants to call out attention to something. And the fourth arm, he has a lotus flower. He is usually, attended by his consort, Lakshmi. His vehicle is the eagle or Garuda in this kind of human like form. He is also attended often by one of his devotees. In this case, it is Narada. And one of the things that you see, according to Bhagavatam, is that Vishnu from his navel comes out a lotus, and in that lotus is Brahma. Now, Vishnu is supposed to sleep on a coiled serpent known as Adishesha, and this Adishesha, with Vishnu sleeping on it, is in the ocean, a huge ocean of milk. Okay, so that is an anthropomorphic mythological description of what Vishnu looks like. There is also another description, and that's what you see an attempt at on the right. This is known as the Vishwarupa, and this is from the ninth century sculpture in the Changunarayan temple in Nepal. So, what you have is this thousands upon thousands of faces and heads and hands and presence everywhere in the sculpture, representing that he is everywhere. So he's omnipresent, he's omniscient, he's omnipotent, and so forth. So there is this dichotomy. You have the anthropomorphic, a man like figure, and on the other hand, you have a figure that is like the whole universe. In fact, if you think about a famous stuti to Vishnu, that shows both sides of it. शान्ताकारं भुजगशयनं पद्मनाभं सुरेशं विश्वाधारं गगनसदृशं मेघवर्णं शुभाङ्गं लक्ष्मीकान्तं कमलनयनं योगिभृत्यानगम्यं वन्दे विष्णुं भवभयहरं सर्वलोकैकनाथम्. So what it's saying is describing Vishnu as peacefully reclining on a serpent with a lotus coming out of his navel. He's the Lord of all gods. On the other hand, he is the supporter of the universe, omnipresent like the sky, then back to being a man. He's dark skinned like the clouds, he's auspicious, he's the consort of Lakshmi, he has eyes the shape of lotus petals. He is the target of meditation of all yogis. So I bow to Vishnu, the removal of worldly suffering, who is the only Lord of all the worlds. So that dichotomy is maintained as a handsome man on the one side and as the entire universe on the other. It's maintained throughout Bhagavatam. That is Vishnu. That's the one we're talking about, taking all these avatars to maintain the world. And before I go into in detail description of avatars, let me do one more in brief, and that is Vyasa avatar. Vyasa is called Veda Vyasa because he collated the Vedas. He's classified all knowledge into four Vedas. Rig Veda contains the Rukkulu or the hymns. Yajurveda contains the details of how to perform yajnas or fire sacrifices. Samaveda contains the music as it pertains to the Vedas and the theory of music. Atharva Veda has the techniques and technology of performing yajnas and various things. Now, not only did Vyasa compile these four Vedas, he also appointed four of his disciples, his Sishyas, to look after them. So, Maharshi Paila was assigned Rig Veda, Vaishampayana, Yajurveda. Maharshi Jaimini took on Samaveda, and Maharshi Sumanta took on Atharva Veda. Now, Vedas contain a collection of mantras, and that's called a Samhita. All of the Vedas have that. Added on top of the Samhita, there is a layer called Brahmanas, which is a commentary on the mantras, and it tells you what exactly it means, what it meant when it was first written, and so forth. And then there are the Aranyakas, which describe the philosophical underpinning under the Vedas. Now, it is, I think, pretty much without doubt that Vedas are among the oldest living documents in the world. Whenever you go into any temple, you're more likely than not to see someone or the other reciting some of the mantras from the Veda. There are Vedic scholars to this day who study all the Vedas and they interpret them and write about them. So, what Veda Vyasa did was to take all the knowledge of the day. It was not just religious, it is a repository of all the knowledge of his day, all historical, philosophical, and spiritual knowledge, and he collated it into these four Vedas. And he assigned it to various Sishyas so that they would not go away. He collated them and he gave them a very long life. And in fact, he succeeded because these Vedas survive to this day in essentially their original form. As if that's not enough accomplishment for one life, writing down an encyclopedia of knowledge from way back, Vyasa also wrote the Mahabharata. Remember, we talked about the one scene, Mahaprasthanam, of Pandavas going away after Krishna died. Oh, he wrote that book starting from the entire story of the Pandavas and the Kauravas and the war and so forth. Well, Vyasa also wrote the Bhagavatam, the one that we are covering today. So, such stupendous productivity and accomplishments. No wonder he's considered an Avatara Purusha or a man who was actually an avatar. So, to give his stuti, Vyasam Vasishtanaptaram Shakte Pautramakalmasham Parasharatmajam Vande Shukatatam Taponidhim Vyasaya Vishnu Rupaya Vyasa Rupaya Vishnave Namo Vai Brahmanidhaye Vasishtaya Namo Namaha. So, this is from the Purva Pitika or the preface to Vishnu Sahasranama Stotra. So, this is a stotram that gives 1,000 names for Vishnu. Now, each name has some sort of a story behind it or some definition of who Vishnu is. And if you read through that Sahasranama Stotram, you do see both sides of it, the dichotomy of him being the universe, the supporter of the universe. He's present everywhere, knows the past, present, and future, and all that. And you also see the humaniform that we have of a handsome man with beautiful eyes and so forth. So, in the Purva Pitika of these 1000 names for Vishnu is the stuti to Vyasa himself. So, Vyasa not only had great accomplishments, he also had recognition of those accomplishments in the Vishnu Sahasranama Stotram itself, which says, I bow to the Immaculate Vyasa, Vasishta's great grandson, Shakti's grandson, Parashara's son, Shuka's father, and the treasury of penance power. Yes, this Shuka is the same Shuka that is talking to Emperor Parikshit in our Bhagavatam. That Shuka was in fact the son of Vyasa, and Vyasa had Shuka himself talk about Bhagavatam in Bhagavatam to Emperor Parikshit. Anyway, this continues. Vyasa is Vishnu and Vishnu is Vyasa. I bow my head to that fount of the knowledge about God, born in the lineage of Vasistha. All right, so that's Vyasa. We've discussed seven different avatars briefly so far. We'll discuss more avatars, and I promise you we'll put more detail into it. There will be great stories in the future episodes. I encourage you to please continue listening. But before we get to all that, I would like to point out to you that Bhagavatam was finalized in about 500 BC. So, apart from Kalki Avatar, which is a prophecy about something that will happen in the future and has not yet happened so far, you can start asking an interesting question. Which future figures would you include in the list of these millions upon millions of avatars? We mentioned in the definition with Suyagnya that an avatar is just someone that has great accomplishments and is recognized as such. So, my question to you is whom can we recognize? Whom of the figures that we know of since 500 BC, so who could not find a place in Bhagavatam, obviously, whom can we think of as um, avatars of Vishnu? Can it be the great philosopher and poet Bhartruhari? Emperor Vinkramaditya. How about the Shatavahana Emperor Shatakar, Prime Minister Chanakya, Emperor Ashoka the Maurya? How about Maharaja Bhoj? What about going south and talking about Ilango Adigal, Nammalva, Thiruvalluvar, the Emperor Nedunchariya Pandya? How about the poets like Banabhatta and Bhavabhuti? Emperor Mahendravarman, who established Indic civilization in the ASEAN country, the immortal sculptor Jakkana, the great philosopher Adi Shankara, astronomer Aryabhatta, the peerless poet Kalidasa, the great emperor Harshavardhana. My point is not to make the case for or against any one of these people, but to encourage you to think of these people and think of others. You will get into trouble like I did when I talked about Dr. M.S. Swaminathan in the modern times. There will be some who will disagree, and there will be more controversy if you think about more modern figures. But can we include any modern figures in this list? How about going to other regions outside of South Asia, going to West Asia in the Gulf, going to Europe, going to Americas and Africa and so forth? There were great men and women all through human history in all the regions. So, whom of these future figures, figures after 500 BC, would we include in the list of avatars? Because, as I said, Bhagavatam does not claim that this is an exhaustive list and there is no other avatars outside. So, just a thought provoking question to give you. As I promised, starting in the next episode, we're going to start a long story arc with the mind sons of Brahma. This is known as Kaumara Avatar, and they start a curse that starts a long arc of a story, and we're going to start that in the next episode. I hope to see you there. Thank you very much for your attention so far.